Welcome to Reality Talk America. So if you never heard of Pam Bondi before, she is a high-profile political figure and former prosecutor who often finds herself at the center of national legal and political debates. Critics say moments like this raise hard questions about transparency and accountability. People questioning this situation argue that public officials should clearly explain major decisions, especially when they involve controversial figures, and high public interest cases. They believe unanswered questions can fuel public distrust and political backlash. And in this clip, the pressure builds when tough questions are raised over reports surrounding Maxwell and a reported transfer decision, with attention turning toward who knew what and who approved it. As usual, let's watch the clip in full. I'm going to give you guys my thoughts towards the end.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Attorney General Bondi, I think you and pretty much everybody else here and throughout the country believes that convicted sex offenders don't deserve special treatment or privileges in prison. And yet Ghislaine Maxwell, Jeffrey Epstein's co-conspirator, received perk after perk in prison. In July, she had a 2-day interview with your deputy and President Trump's former defense attorney, Todd Blanche. Just days after that, Maxwell was transferred from a federal correctional institution in Florida to a minimum security camp in Texas, which she, as a sex offender, would normally be ineligible for. At this new facility, as the ranking member talked about, and by the way, it's nicknamed Club Fed, we've heard reports that she's been afforded special privileges: puppy time, private workouts, personal mail, secretarial services. Attorney General Bondi, does a convicted sex offender like Ghislaine Maxwell deserve special treatment and privileges in prison? Yes or no?
Let me be crystal clear on this. No. And
Thank you.
Let me keep going. No, let me keep going.
Perfect. Well, I
did not know she was being transferred.
I asked you yes or no.
She was not transferred to a lower
Mr. Chairman,
level.
please stop the clock and remind the witness of the rules. One rule she needs to understand here.
And I'm glad that we're agreeing. So when we're agreeing, we can move on to some other things.
But
I want you to know that every time she does get these perks, and it's been publicly reported, that the folks she's abused, the survivors who are sitting here, they see themselves as being denied justice. They feel re-traumatized. And I'm glad that we agree on that. But she should not be in that prison. And she needs to be moved back to a maximum security prison as soon as possible. But what she has told another committee here is that she won't cooperate with them unless she gets clemency from Donald Trump. It's just crazy to consider that she can be wielding this kind of influence within the administration. But that begs the question: who ordered her to be transferred to the minimum security prison that she was ineligible for? Who signed off on the special privileges? Was it Mr. Blanche? Was it one of your other subordinates? So please, can you tell us who sent her there, since you don't agree she should be there?
I said I do not agree she should receive special treatment. She was transferred, I learned after the fact, to the same level facility, and that is a question for the Bureau of Prisons. I was not involved in that at all. The same level facility, I don't know why, but you know, instead of talking about Ghislaine Maxwell, who hopefully will die in prison, you should be talking about Irina Zarutska.
I have a couple
who
of
died
other
on a subway.
Right, and I absolutely...
You don't talk about that.
I have been talking about it and actually helping with these issues. But we're going to move back to you.
I bet we are.
Yes, of course, because you're here to testify. That's what the whole point of this endeavor is. So of course we're moving back to you. It is all about you. So as we've heard, she took the fifth in response to every single question in that committee hearing. And her lawyer dangled the offer of clemency. Should Donald Trump pardon or commute her sentence? Should she be released from prison, yes or no? You said you hope she dies there, so I'm hoping the answer is no.
I already answered that question.
Good. I'm very glad. I really like this bipartisan agreement about
when
what
it
should
agrees
happen
with you. But you don't want to talk about Irina Zarutska. You don't want to talk about
I talk about
murdered
her all
by
the
a
time,
violent crime
but
offender
I am not
in
here
your
to
jurisdiction.
testify before Congress. You are. That is your job today.
You're
That's what you're getting paid for.
obsessed with attacking.
So I want you to know that your own DOJ employee, he's recently been demoted and had some other problems, advises on pardons. Do you think he will be advising Mr. Trump on any kind of clemency or pardon for Ghislaine Maxwell?
I am not going to speculate, and you couldn't even identify properly. That's why you don't want to talk about Irina Zarutska. You couldn't properly identify her relative.
I absolutely
It's embarrassing.
have been, and her family, by the way, appreciates all of the condolences, all of the help,
Welcome to Reality Talk America. Today we are talking about a moment that is getting a lot of attention because it touches on something that always drives public outrage: accountability, transparency, and whether powerful institutions are really answering difficult questions or finding ways to avoid them. The story centers around Attorney General Pam Bondi being questioned by Congresswoman Deborah Ross over the prison transfer of Ghislaine Maxwell, the convicted associate of Jeffrey Epstein, who is currently serving a federal prison sentence connected to sex trafficking crimes. And one major question kept coming back again and again: who approved the transfer and why did it happen in the first place? Now, when people hear the phrase club fed, they immediately react because that phrase has been used for years to describe lower security prison facilities that critics argue can appear far less restrictive than what the public imagines when thinking about federal incarceration. That is where this controversy starts becoming political, because lawmakers questioning Bondi were not simply asking whether Maxwell moved from one prison to another, they were asking whether special treatment existed, whether normal procedures were followed, and whether someone inside the system approved something that should never have happened without major oversight. During congressional questioning, Ross pressed Bondi, directly asking who approved Maxwell moving into a minimum security federal prison facility, and Bondi responded that she learned about the transfer after it happened and said questions about authorization should go to the Bureau of Prisons. Now, politically speaking, that answer created a major problem, because whenever a top official says they did not know about something controversial happening inside an agency connected to their department, critics immediately ask another question: how could leadership not know? And if leadership truly did not know, does that create a different accountability problem entirely? That became the larger story. Not simply the transfer itself, but whether oversight mechanisms inside government agencies are functioning the way Americans expect them to function. Ross continued pushing because lawmakers argued documentation should exist regarding major prison transfer decisions, especially involving a high-profile inmate connected to one of the most publicly scrutinized criminal cases in modern American history. And this is where public trust becomes central. People across political lines may disagree on policy, they may disagree on leadership, they may disagree on ideology, but accountability is different: Republican, Democrat, Independent. Most voters generally agree powerful institutions should explain controversial decisions clearly, especially when public confidence is already fragile. What intensified discussion further was Bondi making another statement during testimony saying Maxwell would hopefully die in prison. Supporters viewed the statement as making clear Maxwell was not receiving sympathy. Critics argued it still avoided the central question lawmakers were asking: who approved the transfer? Now, there is another angle here worth discussing. Political hearings are often not only about getting answers, they are also about public perception. Lawmakers know headlines matter, officials know headlines matter. Sometimes the exchange itself becomes bigger than the policy issue underneath it, and moments like this can shape public opinion very quickly. Because people watching at home are often evaluating more than facts, they evaluate confidence, clarity, transparency, and whether answers sound complete. In this situation, Ross kept attention focused directly on process and authorization. Bondi pointed toward agency responsibility. That gap created the viral political moment people are now debating, and it also created another reality that exists in modern politics. The more difficult a question becomes, the more attention people pay when nobody appears willing or able to answer it clearly. Congressional oversight exists because lawmakers are expected to challenge executive agencies when concerns emerge. Agency leadership exists because the public expects accountability structures to operate correctly when those systems collide publicly. Moments like this happen, and suddenly a prison transfer becomes something much larger, a debate about transparency, government responsibility, institutional trust, and whether Americans feel powerful systems work equally for everyone. Because whether somebody supports Bondi or criticizes Bondi, whether somebody trusts institutions or questions institutions, people generally expect controversial decisions involving nationally significant cases to have clear records, clear approval chains, and clear explanations. That expectation is not partisan, that expectation is institutional, and right now that appears to be exactly why this story continues growing, because until there are answers, questions remain. And when questions remain, political pressure rarely disappears, it usually grows louder. And that is why this exchange is getting attention across political media right now, not because prison administration normally becomes headline news, but because accountability always becomes headline news when people believe information is missing.